There's something kind of scary brewing in America. Communism.
You heard that right. The scary thing that's brewing right now in America is communism, not fascism. Even though the fascists are in full control of our government and they're crippling institutions and dismantling the administrative state as we speak, the real threat is actually communism. Yeah, makes sense. Now, in case you don't know who that is, it's comedian Ethan Klein of the H3 podcast. And even though he tried to say that in a funny way, I promise you, he wasn't trying to do satire. It's what he unironically believes. Now, I don't know how familiar my audience is with Ethan Klein and the H3 podcast, but if you aren't familiar with him, I know that you've at least probably seen this incredible moment that he helped to facilitate.
Oh no, Sam Seder, what a fucking nightmare. You, I had no idea this was going to happen.
Oh no, Sam Seder.
And now it's all come full circle because Ethan Klein is now the one who refuses to talk to Sam Seder, much like Cenk Ugyur of TYT, who's also currently crashing out like Ethan Klein. And as Jimmy Dore slid further to the right a couple of years ago, he too refused to debate Sam Seder. So it feels like Sam Seder has become the de facto final boss of grifters and crashouts because they know that he would easily expose their bullshit, hence why they avoid him like the fucking plague. But an existential fear of Sam Seder is not the only thing that Ethan Klein and Cenk Ugyur, as well as Kasparian, have in common. They've all been cheered on recently by the far right for punching left. Ethan's been applauded by the likes of Tim Pool and Keemstar and Ian Miles Chong, all for his smear campaign against his former co-host Hasan Piker. Now, on the subject of similarities between the H3 and TYT crashouts, we also saw how the far right showered Kasparian with compliments for her birthing person tweet. Ethan Klein also hates Hasan. Kasparian, she hates him too. Cenk doesn't, so he gets a little bit of a pass there because that's his nephew. Both TYT and H3 are fueled by personal petty grievances and hurt feelings. Ethan and Cenk claim everybody else has changed while they're the ones who've remained consistent. In fact, there's a lot of similarities between the H3 and TYT crashouts, but ironically, Ethan Klein is able to see what's happening at TYT, but he doesn't have the self-awareness to see that he's had a similar trajectory for the same reasons.
Speaking of which, have you noticed the co-host from the Young Turks, Anna, what's her last name, has gone like full Trump? No. And Cenk too. They've both gone like pro-Trump. It's so crazy. Check it out. It's fucking weird.
They have?
Yeah.
Now, to clarify, Ethan hasn't gone full MAGA, although he has made some reactionary points, like he berated one of his producers, Olivia, for pronouns. I think he called her woke, if I'm remembering correctly. So, there's some groundwork there being laid for a right-wing pivot, wittingly or unwittingly, but Ethan Klein is incapable of seeing that minor disagreements with the left and an inability to accept good faith criticism is ultimately what broke Cenk and Anna's brains, and it's the exact same thing that broke his brain too. But he hasn't changed, apparently. He's not grifting. The real grifter is his left-wing co-host who mildly criticized him. To show you what I mean, so in the same clip that we just watched, Ethan Klein accused Hasan Piker of being the one to pull a Dave Rubin, albeit a reverse Dave Rubin.
I think he did like what Dave Rubin did, but like the other direction. He realized that like he could farm more audience going that direction. And Dave Rubin thought, well, I can farm more audience going to the right. Yeah. I don't know, man. Doesn't seem to be coming from a very serious place. He's always been
left-leaning, though. Dave Rubin did like a full flip. Like Dave Rubin was left to right.
By the way,
yeah, see, even his producer Dan didn't agree with him because it's laughably fucking stupid. But it's not lost on me that Cenk Ugyur likened his new nemesis, Sam Seder, to the likes of Jimmy Dore and Dave Rubin as well, even though he's the one that's on that trajectory with those people.
So finally, after somebody does it 1,000 times, we're like, all right, fuck it. Here's who's doing it, and fuck them, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, oh no, I can't believe you're saying that about poor Jimmy Dore. I can't believe you're saying that about poor Dave Rubin. I can't believe you're saying that about poor Sam Seder. I know. Poor Sam.
Interesting, right? So there's a lot of similarities between H3's crash out and TYT's crash out. But even though Cenk and Anna might bitch and moan about criticism that they get from the left, they have never gone so far as to call for leftists to be deplatformed because of their disagreements. And that right there is where Ethan Klein stands out as the biggest piece of shit in this situation. because he's launched an all-out campaign to deplatform Hasan Piker. We're not just talking about him disagreeing with Hasan Piker and criticizing Hasan Piker. He is trying to destroy Hasan Piker, his former friend and co-host. But I want to back up a little bit and give you some additional context so that way we're all on the same page, because again, I'm not sure how much of my audience is familiar with Ethan Klein, but I want you to know how it got to this point. So after October 7th, both Ethan and Hasan seemed to be on the same page for the most part, but soon after, some disagreements began to emerge. Ethan Klein supported a two-state solution, whereas Hasan supported a one-state solution. Ethan Klein made comments that were tone-deaf and, frankly, idiotic and offensive by claiming that Jewish Voice for Peace wasn't sufficient evidence of Jewish opposition to Israel, and he invoked kapos to make that point. And the audience did not like that. Now, at that point, he ended the Leftovers podcast with Hasan because of the pushback that he thought he was receiving from Hasan's community specifically, but it wasn't just his community, it was Ethan's community too. I know this because I've been a part of Ethan's community longer than I've been a part of Hasan's community. I'm a fan of both of them. Now, I had to take a break from H3, and then I returned after he made those terrible comments, and when I returned, one of the first episodes was him making fun of Aaron Bushnell behind a paywalled episode. Aaron Bushnell, for those who don't remember, is somebody who self-immolated. He is a U.S. veteran who self-immolated to protest our complicity with Israel's genocide. And to see Ethan Klein respond in the way that he did, that was when I had to check out for good, because I just couldn't get past his disgusting take there. He started to also conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. He later spent an entire episode shitting on Hasan Piker, and during that episode, his Lebanese staffers had family in Lebanon that had to evacuate because they were being bombed by Israel. He centered his feelings during that entire episode, didn't even let them share their experience. That's insane to me. He later claimed recently, actually, that Joe Biden was actually good when it comes to Israel-Palestine, even though he armed and funded them at every step of the way. His wife, Ela Klein, called Yoav Gallant a really good guy, even though he is the war criminal who called Palestinians human animals while announcing that he was going to be cutting off food and electricity to all of them, not just Hamas. And over time, these things that he kept saying started to add up, and the left-wing audience that he cultivated began to grow tired of this bullshit commentary that they've been hearing. And little by little, as he lost viewers and subscribers every single week, he began to grow more angry with Hasan, because seemingly he felt like Hasan turned his audience against him, which isn't true at all. He has a left-leaning audience that just agreed more with Hasan, full stop. And I don't think I'm making unreasonable assumptions here, because Ethan has been pretty upfront about the fact that his anger towards Hasan stemmed from him having hurt feelings. And I say that because he included this clip in his content nuke of Hasan from a conversation that they both had just before he ended the Leftovers podcast.
Do you care that your chat is calling me racist? Do you make any attempt to modify?
I have not looked at my chat.
Moderate that at all?
I have not looked at my chat at all, but you have
I just
to
opened it, but don't you have moderators? Do you care at all about what your audience says about me?
There's 32,000 people in here right now.
I'm just trying to tell you guys how it feels. And I'm fucking shocked that you don't care that people in your chat are saying, who the fuck is this child, cold, arrogant,
Ethan,
fuck?
I love you, but there's only so much I can do.
How can you be surprised when your Discord is literally full of fucking...
Ethan, I love you, but there's only so much I can do.
Now, to be clear, Hasan was banning people who were being purposefully antagonistic towards Ethan out of respect for him and their friendship. I know because I was there. I saw Hasan on stream ban chatters who came in talking shit about Ethan Klein. He tried to get his own chat to see it from Ethan Klein's perspective as a dual citizen of the U.S. and Israel. But that wasn't enough for Ethan Klein. And ever since that moment, his hatred towards Hasan has grown and festered. You know, for months he's been stewing, and it's reached the point where Ethan Klein is not only comparing Hasan to literal neo-Nazis like Nick Fuentes, but he's also accusing him of being a terrorist sympathizer. And worse, he's trying to get Twitch to ban Hasan, and he used this content nuke to encourage his viewers to call for an advertiser boycott of Twitch if they don't actually ban Hasan.
I made this video for two reasons. First, to stop Hasan infiltrating mainstream media. Hasan has been welcomed by many mainstream outlets. They view him as a friendly social democrat, as someone who's just trying to spread progressive politics online to an important demographic. But we know that's not true. He is not their friend or their ally. If you ever see Hasan rubbing shoulders with anyone from mainstream media, let them know politely, with all the civility in the world, what kind of person he is when he thinks mainstream media isn't watching. Help them understand that his name should be associated with people like Nick Fuentes and Alex Jones, other fringe, radical, political commentators. Number 2, Twitch must be held accountable. Twitch has proven that it will not change by choice, and so it is our moral imperative to enact that change through any reasonable means that we can. Samsung, Chevron, and Capcom. Twitch has given them a lasting association with a racial tier list with Arabs at the top and Jews at the bottom. These brands have every right to know, and they should. We all recall YouTube's adpocalypse. It happened when ads were running over ISIS recruitment videos, and it caused a brand exodus. The same thing is happening now on Twitch, but instead of ISIS, it's the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Dan Clancy's refusal to moderate extremists is the only reason for any of this. He is the sole person to blame.
Yeah. Now, first of all, he is grossly mischaracterizing the racial tier list that he referenced there, and he got all of those small creators banned for a month because of his outrage over that. But now he's trying to cause adpocalypse on Twitch to kill everybody's channels, so that way they'll all be mad at Hasan. So that way other creators will try to sacrifice Hasan to the gods of the advertisers in order to spare them. Now, conspicuously enough, Ethan Klein doesn't have the same energy for the right-wing streamers who push red pill manosphere bullshit to young men, or for the fascists who are spreading genocidal hate speech towards trans people and immigrants and also Palestinians. He's targeting Hasan simply because his fucking feelings are hurt. That is what this is about. Meanwhile, as he's coping and seething, Hasan is having the time of his life. Hasan was in Japan feeding capybaras in a French maid outfit while Ethan Klein's content nuke dropped. And you could tell that Hasan is not bothered by Ethan's bullshit because he knows that he's right. Conversely, Ethan Klein is extremely bothered by Hasan because deep down he knows that he's in the wrong. In times like these, we need people like Hasan more than ever. So, when we're trying to fight fascists and you want to take away a prominent anti-fascist voice, Ethan, I take that personally, right? You are trying to cripple the left's ability to fight fascism by targeting one of the loudest voices that we have in this space. Now, in his 1 hour, 40-minute long content nuke, Ethan claims that Hasan should be deplatformed not because his feelings are hurt, but because he's promoting terrorism in a number of ways. So he says that since Hasan is promoting terrorism and that's against Twitch's TOS, well, they have grounds to ban him. Now, he makes this argument by including clips of Hasan broadcasting videos of Houthis dancing, saying that that's terrorist propaganda. He accuses Hasan of not pushing back enough against the Yemeni pirate that he brought on his program. And a lot of these claims that he makes during this process are very poorly sourced. He clearly cherry picks headlines while not reading the article. And he makes a lot of rookie mistakes during this video essay. Not to mention, a lot of the clips that he used of Hasan were very clearly misrepresented or taken out of context completely, but he sourced these from Destiny's community, specifically their subreddit, I'm assuming. But to be fair, there were criticisms in that content nuke that he lobbed at Hasan that were reasonable. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I can understand why some of these things that Hasan says would be off-putting to somebody who's offended by edgy humor or isn't necessarily on our side of the political aisle, so him saying that sounds extreme. With that being said, the crux of his argument here falls apart when you understand the double standard and sheer hypocrisy of what Ethan Klein is saying. So while he accuses Hasan of being a terrorist sympathizer, he doesn't hold streamers who literally make pro-IDF content to that same standard, even though they explicitly whitewash and justify IDF terrorism. Nor does he accuse those types of people, Lonerbox, Destiny, Brianna Wu, of promoting terrorism. And he doesn't say that they should be banned. He just says this about Hasan. Right? Now, he certainly doesn't hold his own wife to that same standard. She was a member of the IDF, which is a terrorist organization, to be clear. But since Israeli soldiers wear military fatigues and have the full backing of the US government, well, he's incapable of seeing them as the terrorists that they are. So anybody who promotes them aren't necessarily promoting terrorism by definition because they're the good guys. Now, he also defends Hila by saying that Israel had mandatory military service, so she had no choice but to serve in the IDF, which is fair. But he never responds to the fact that she willingly shared the fact that she had a boring desk job with the IDF, but chose a different position within the military because she thought that it was too boring. And on that same podcast, she talked about how she went on a raid to a terrorist city. Ramallah, specifically, is what she was referring to. And more recently, his wife Hila called the Israeli defense minister, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity, a really good guy. Now, listen, I don't expect him to call his wife a fucking terrorist, obviously, but I do expect him to have a little bit of fucking self-awareness and maybe not lob that term around so casually if that's his wife's history. And on that note, YouTuber Bad Empanada did a thorough breakdown about this, and he explained how by Ethan's own standards, Ethan Klein is more of a terrorist than the Yemeni kid that Hasan interviewed. And that's important because it's one of the core pieces of evidence that Ethan Klein is using to supposedly prove that Hasan is a terrorist sympathizer. And that right there is the core issue that people like me, a former fan of Ethan Klein, take with this arc that he's on, this anti-Hasan arc. It is a double standard that is clearly rooted in Western chauvinism, in Islamophobia, and quite frankly, in racism. And putting aside that issue, it's rich for somebody like him to condemn Hasan for his craziest takes when he literally had to buy a $20,000 button for his podcast to purge oopsies that he made during live streams. I mean, we're talking about somebody that beamed a little bit too close to the sun multiple times. He said that he hoped the NRA convention, when it was happening, I think it was 2023 or so, got shut up. He said that if there's another Holocaust, he hopes that Ben Shapiro is gassed first or last. And he admits that he says offensive things himself in the Content Nuke, to his credit, but he implies that Hasan's edgy comments are just too beyond the pale, whereas his aren't, I guess. And I mean, that's fine. You can think that, but it makes you a hypocrite, especially considering how you literally built your fucking career by making edgy jokes. And now he's taking to Instagram to attack people who criticize him. And he's even saying that, oh, this term crashing out is ableist. That's not his exact word, but that's what he's implying. So all of a sudden, this edgy guy who had to buy a $20,000 button to hide the fucked up things that he says is now the biggest woke scold and thinks that he can call for other people to be deplatformed given everything that he said. I mean, it's just so fucking hypocritical. The audacity of him, right? So it feels so weird that all of a sudden he is the biggest pearl clutcher on the internet and he's calling for his former co-host to be deplatformed. And the worst part is that Ethan Klein, like there's this level of disingenuity that is so frustrating. He feigns ignorance, for example, to Hasan's leftism at one point in the Content Nuke and makes it seem like Hasan groomed him or exploited him to get to his audience, to radicalize them against him. And that's presumably how he reached the conclusion that communism is this dangerous threat brewing in America because, you know, he saw firsthand how it affected his audience and, you know, he's warning everybody else.
We were doing our regular show, and for the first time I noticed an inordinate amount of radical, hardcore leftists. I mean, I thought we were social democrats, not whatever this was. I don't hate the idea of like people who can be successful. I think it's good that people can achieve success in the term monetary success. I mean, that's what that means, right? I do. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.
Because I see so many people in the chat saying, no.
I don't know what y'all are tripping about. Like, what the fuck do you want?
What is the idea that
you guys
people are looking for?
You guys are all like radical communists? There's that many radical communists? Suck it, chat. You're watching a capitalist pig. Deal with it.
Now, he has cultivated more of a left-wing audience due to his proximity with Hasan and also because he kind of made a pivot after making pretty reactionary videos. But there were also a lot of people in his audience that have always been left-wing. People like myself who remember the cringeworthy episodes where he debated with his producers, Dan and Ian, about whether or not billionaires should exist. That was insufferable to me, and I'm glad that he moved away from that and became more progressive with time. I mean, his audience was not happy back then, if you go back and watch those episodes, and they especially aren't happy now that he's running interference for rich people. So, of course, they're going to respond to you by criticizing you, especially again, after you moved away from that trajectory that you were on towards the end of the SJW era back in like 2016, 2017, where he was platforming racists like John Tron and hucksters like Jordan Peterson, twice for that matter. So to see you move in this better direction where you take accountability for your past actions, that was encouraging. So your audience is holding you to this new standard that you set for yourself. But he doesn't like that, right? But here's where his content Nuke got especially fucking clownish. When he pretends like he was victimized by Hasan, who apparently lied to him about his true communist intent. And this right here is where we get into the Red Scare portion of the content Nuke, and it is the most clownish shit I have ever seen in my fucking life.
Now listen to Hasan during our very first conversation lie to me about how he's a social democrat to hide his power level.
We should move towards a Sweden-style economy or a Norway-style economy, which would be a social democracy.
You have to advocate for a much lighter form of propaganda.
With robust social safety nets.
Cold radicalization funnel, catch them while they're young, as they say.
And protections for workers, like higher unionization rates.
A lighter form, while simultaneously still doing agitated propaganda that goes beyond social democratic ideas.
Hell, he's proclaimed it loudly that he is a self-described propagandist.
I'm a propagandist.
Well, no.
For the record.
No, I'm not calling
I'm
you
a
that. I'm just saying, I'm going to play you.
I'm saying I am.
Okay, well then, I want to
I'm saying I am.
I just
before
want to
you even play it.
A propagandist is much more than someone with a bias. It's someone who knowingly lies to further their political agenda.
And then I had a terrifying vision. Had I been duped? Was Hasan presenting a Trojan horse to my community, where he was just a left-leaning Democrat like myself, and as he said in the previous video, was funneling them into radicalization and turning them against me?
Liberals are some of the easiest to manipulate people on the fucking planet, dude.
I learned how much he hates liberals.
Dude, I hate liberals, dude. I hate them. I hate them so viciously.
Did he secretly despise me this whole time?
I'm sorry, dude. I hate liberals so much.
Did this man sit next to me for 2 years and pretend to be my friend?
Dude, liberals are a burden on this planet, dude.
Liberals are the most, like, scummy, vile, fucking idiots. Liberals are incredibly stupid. I hate these petulant liberals, dumb fucking liberals.
What else is someone this sociopathic capable of?
Liberals are some of the easiest to manipulate people on the fucking planet, dude.
Was I being manipulated this whole time?
That was my fear anyway. Regardless of his true beliefs, that broke my trust in him, and I pretty much ended the show immediately. And I felt guilty for my participation in mainstreaming Hasan.
It is adorable that he credits himself for Hasan's popularity. That right there is peak delusion. But as you saw, it always comes back to Ethan's feelings. First of all, propaganda is a value-neutral term. It doesn't necessitate lying. He made that up. Second of all leftists have expressed anger with liberals for many reasons. Liberals have done the same. But liberals in particular, like Ethan Klein, they agitate leftists by choosing to focus their ire on the left as opposed to the fascists who seized power in this country. And he's not the only person who does this, to be fair. It happens all the time, which is why the left does get frustrated with liberals. For example, Olivia Giuliana, a pro-Democrat influencer, chose to bash Chappell Roan for calling for healthcare for musicians at the Grammys, while implying that she didn't support Kamala Harris, who had a plan to expand access to healthcare, except she's lying. She did vote for Kamala Harris, she just didn't want to publicly endorse her because of her complicity with genocide. Moreover, liberals on Twitter spent Trump's first week in office bashing my leftist mafia co-host, Ariana Jasmine, for saying that she wouldn't vote for Joe Biden because as a Muslim woman, she couldn't overlook the genocide that he was complicit with. Never mind the fact that in the end, she did vote for Kamala Harris for purposes of harm reduction and showed up to the DNC convention to pressure them to platform a Palestinian speaker. She put in the work and she was still raked over the coals for not sufficiently swearing fealty to the Democratic Party. So there's been this long-standing animosity between leftists and liberals because we are forced to share a party with people that have completely different worldviews than we have. Liberals are capitalists. Leftists are anti-capitalists. Liberals like the Democratic Party. Leftists do not like the Democratic Party, although some of us align with Democrats to stop fascists, right? And we're critical of the Democratic Party because we want them to do better and beat fascists, which irritates liberals. But Ethan Klein feels like Hasan downplayed his actual beliefs to radicalize Ethan's audience and ultimately turn them against him. But Hasan has literally never hid his views, ever. He has a bust of Lenin behind him. And I hate to break it to Ethan, but as leftists, we know Americans might be turned off by socialism or criticisms of capitalism, so we all try to meet people where they are by making arguments that are more digestible to mainstream audiences. Rather than saying socialism, we might say social democracy or democracy in the workplace instead, since democracy is more familiar to Americans, whereas socialism seems foreign to them. Like, we're trying to craft arguments that resonate with people, so that way they're not susceptible to fascist radicalization. If they're going to be radicalized, we want them to be radicalized in a good way. So that way they are speaking out for social justice and economic rights, which is really important right now, since, again, the fascists have all the power in this country. Kind of an important point. It's not deceptive. It's called fucking politics. Hasan and Ethan's audience were well aware of the fact that Hasan was very much anti-capitalist when they started that podcast. And if Ethan was somehow ignorant to that fact, if he was somehow the only person in America that didn't know that Hasan was a socialist, well, then that's his fault and nobody else's. But therein lies one of the problems. Ethan Klein is incapable of admitting that he's ever at fault. Sound familiar? While he takes responsibility for platforming Hasan, he, kind of eases his culpability there by suggesting it was only because he unwittingly was duped by Hasan and didn't know any better. Ooh. And instead of trying to understand where his audience, who respected him, is coming from and why they're frustrated with the stances that he's taking, he instead blames Hasan for their disagreement with him and chalks it up to anti-Semitism. And Hasan pointed this out during a stream after Ethan dropped his content nuke.
Constantly pointing the finger at other people. It can't be me. It can't be the broad reception of my worldview. It cannot be the way that people understand where I'm coming from, okay? The way people have heard the same talking points over and over again from people who are genuinely deeply pro-Israel. Maybe that was the reason why people were saying that. No, it must be because of anti-Semitism. And it's like, it's not as though anti-Semitism isn't increasing. It is, okay? And it's something that I understand. It's something that many of these people that Ethan has falsely smeared as anti-Semitic understand. So especially at a time when there's motherfuckers like Nick Fuentes, Jake Shields, or numerous other like actually anti-Semitic monsters out there who are running rampant, hyper-focusing on people who are anti-Zionist and expressly and openly not anti-Semitic is certainly a choice.
Yeah, but according to Ethan Klein, Hasan Piker is just as extreme as Nick Fuentes, and you should focus all of your energy on making sure that Hasan is treated like we treat the Nazis. Don't do that to the fascists. Do it to somebody who's fighting the fascists. And on the subject of Nick Fuentes, to talk about treating Hasan like him, Ethan Klein doesn't talk about Destiny, who platformed Nick Fuentes. He has nothing to say about that in radicalization. He only has this fire for Hasan Piker. It's always left punching. But again, this is where these similarities between Ethan Klein and Cenk Ugyur start to show again, albeit to a much lesser extent. So Cenk often equates the far left with the far right, as if they're comparable, when they are not comparable, not even close. The far right wants a white ethno-state, whereas the far left wants free healthcare and social justice and freedom for workers. Comparing the two is tantamount to fascist apologia as far as I'm concerned, because you are sanitizing the danger that these fascists actually pose. They want to inflict pain and suffering on vulnerable people, whereas the left wants to stop that. Wants everybody to be equal, wants everybody to have healthcare and worker rights. But even as people like Ethan Klein and Cenk suggest that the far right and far left are opposite sides of the same coin, one thing that's becoming abundantly clear is that neither of them have the same energy for the far right that they have for the far left. And David Dole actually confronted Cenk about this on Twitter after he made this tweet, which reads, "Me, we have to talk to the other side instead of just calling them Nazi or racist. Far left, you're straw manning. We're not doing that. Me, then what's the problem? Far left. You're whitewashing them when you talk to them. Me, how? Far left. By not calling them white supremacists. Me, Now David responded saying, bending over backwards to appeal to Nazis while having unhinged vitriol for the left sure is a strategy. He continues, bending over backwards to appeal to the right while attacking the left is literally what Jimmy Dore did, and we all made fun of him for it. Now you're surprised people are criticizing you for doing it? Cenk responded saying, you're still calling them Nazis. I thought you were one of the smarter ones, David. I guess I was wrong. MAGA is not destroying the Democratic Party and ruining any chance to pass our priorities. The radical left is, with lunatic positions like crime doesn't exist. David responded saying, that's a complete straw man. Please show me a video from anyone, myself, Majority Report, Fran, whoever, saying crime doesn't exist. You're just making things up. The left is also very clear about their hatred for the Democratic Party, and you know that. The argument I'm simply making is, why is your vitriol for the left so clear and consistent while you go over the top to appeal to people like Charlie Kirk and Elon Musk? Cenk responded to that saying, you pretending as if all the radical left hosts were just minding their business when we, out of nowhere, attack those poor innocent folks is the biggest load of bullshit. That's why you lying like this is weird and disappointing. They attacked us with vicious lies first. David responded saying, simply not the case. Ole went on your show to discuss her perspective as an activist and attorney, and you immediately made it an adversarial interview. Anna, to her credit, was trying to keep it civil, and that was after months of attacks on powerless, as in not in positions of power, left-wing activists, trans activists, and otherwise, weren't doing activism in a way that you thought was correct. Cenk responded by saying, I get it, David. You also want clicks. He says this because he has no other response to it, because David is right. Here, everybody, look at how self-righteous and morally pure David is. He also hates all rational strategies. Give him some clicks. Ole was arguing for abolishing prisons. Is there a dumber position? David responded to that with a death blow, saying, bro, looking at TYT, I think you're the one that needs clicks. I'm doing just fine covering news and politics. This won't be on my channel. You're not as important as you once were. Cenk responded to that angrily saying, great, then fuck off. Also, why is every left-wing channel doing videos about us, and how are they the brave ones willing to call everyone Nazis, but we aren't? Make up your mind on your talking points. Are we grifters who did it for a larger audience, or is our audience dwindling? Finally, David responded saying, again, literally no one is saying that, lol. You always make these claims that left-wing channels are calling you a Nazi and never produce the evidence. I don't think you're grifting. I think you've made a horrible mistake thinking you can appeal to cult members when there's a mass exodus of liberals from MSNBC that you could be attempting to move left. So as you can see from that exchange, Cenk is exhibiting a lot of the same characteristics as Ethan Klein is during his crash out too. The grievance politics, the victim complex, the left punching, the inability to ever admit that they're wrong about anything ever, the ironic allegations that their critics are the ones who are grifting and not them, the lashing out, which Ethan Klein has done quite a bit, not just at Hasan Piker, by the way. He lashed out at Ludwig for daring to point out that Ethan shared a fake screenshot in his content nuke that he sourced from Destiny's subreddit. Now he also viciously attacks Rogan for the most petty, disgusting reasons ever. He's attacked Anthony Sargon, who is a Lebanese leftist streamer who was also a former fan of Ethan Klein. And he seemingly, like Cenk and Anna, reads and responds to literally every piece of criticism that he sees, which is awful because that contributes to their brain rot and accelerates the crash out. And I mean, if you're not going to listen to anybody's good faith criticism, then why even read it in the first place? It doesn't make sense to me. And it's just sad because, like, I respected all of these people at one point. And it's sad because Ethan, Anna, Cenk, they've all chosen to further insulate themselves in different echo chambers instead of engaging with people who used to be their friends that have good faith criticism towards them. And now, so many bridges have been unnecessarily burned. Hasan offered to speak to Ethan and debate him about his criticisms. He even offered to facilitate a conversation between Ethan and Sam Seder, and Hasan is going to explain how that offer went.
I tried changing his mind. Maybe this time I'll bring Sam Seder, and you'll be the one saying, oh my God, Sam Seder, what a nightmare, because, you know, you've been running away from him. Yeah, I wonder why Ethan Klein won't talk to Sam Seder. In private correspondence, I told you, I said, hey man, I know you don't respect me, because he's claimed that I wasn't like talking to him at all. So I said, hey, I don't think you respect me at all, but you respect Sam Seder. You should talk to him. You should talk to him about this issue. He has a lot of lived experience. And he said that was anti-Semitic. Everything is anti-Semitic.
And that right there is how you know Ethan Klein has lost his goddamn mind. He interpreted Hasan's offer to connect him with someone he says he respects as, oh, you just think that I'm a bad Jewish person and you want to connect me with a good Jewish person that affirms your views. I mean, I feel like he's known Hasan long enough at this point to know that that wasn't Hasan's intent. And I think he was just making an excuse because he doesn't want to talk to Sam Seder because, again, Sam Seder knows his shit. Ethan does not. But, you know, Ethan Klein has avoided Sam Seder like Cenk. He's attacked Emma Vigeland, much like Cenk and Anna. And the reason why Sam Seder is persona non grata to all of them is because, again, he is very knowledgeable and he cuts straight through their fucking bullshit. They don't want their grift and bullshit to be exposed, so they don't talk to Sam Seder. But at the end of the day, even though all of this feels like petty drama, and it is to an extent, I do think that there's valuable lessons that we can all learn from this, right? One, never have any heroes. And also, you know, while liberals like Ethan Klein and Cenk and Anna could use their massive platforms to take on fascists, they've instead let their own personal grievances blind them from the things that really matter the most. And all of us should make sure that we never let ourselves fall that far and do things like that. You know, while they're caught up in their feelings, again, fascists are consolidating power as we speak and destroying democracy. While they're punching left, fascists are applauding them for doing that. Come on over to the good side, Ethan. And you know, there's nothing that we can do to change their minds, clearly, but we can use this as a lesson for ourselves and make sure that we always recenter conversations to what matters the most. This is what Hasan tried to do repeatedly in his conversations with Ethan Klein, and he would remind them that their disagreements or Ethan's feelings shouldn't overshadow the genocide that's taking place. And Ethan actually mocked Hasan Piker for trying to recenter the conversation around genocide in his content nuke. I'll repeat that. Ethan Klein made fun of Hasan Piker for trying to recenter the conversation on the thing that matters the most. But that is exactly what he should be doing. And it demonstrates why Hasan Piker is a valuable voice in this space who deserves to be defended from Ethan Klein's bad faith and petty attacks. So let this be a warning to you all. In times like this, it is so important to let go of your ego and be introspective and be open to constructive criticism, especially if they come from friends, and be able to adapt and recalibrate from time to time if your focus isn't lining up with the things that matter the most. We are all human beings, so we're all susceptible to pettiness and being drama queens, and we all engage in infighting. But at the end of the day, we need to remind ourselves that that doesn't matter, and we're not the main characters.
Ideas. In recovery mode, my brain ideas. In recovery mode, my brain ideas.